This meeting will be video. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. So welcome everyone, and really appreciate everyone's willingness to jump in on an off schedule meeting. I think it's a pretty important topic, so it's really good that very pleased that everyone's willing to be able to jump in here. We do have one guest, Mary Shaw. Mary, do you want to introduce yourself? I think everyone probably knows you, but Mary. Well, anyway, Mary is the
She's
chair
on,
of our finance committee.
she's on
Uh,
mute. I don't know whether that might mean anything.
yeah, Mary, I see you're on mute. Are you? Let me ask her to unmute. I did say hi to her earlier as everyone was joining in. Um, okay, there's Eleni. Very good. Welcome, Eleni. I just called the meeting to order and was thanking everyone for taking the time to jump in here today. We want to focus very strongly on the committee response to the draft goals and recommendations, or goals and strategies, as we might want to call them. So I want to go through that in just a moment. I have a couple of things to preface that with, just to help us through. But just a couple of quick notes. Today is also the select board meeting to discuss the ZEV policy, hopefully adopt it, and the decarbonization roadmap. I don't know if Shana is online or not, as Town of Eastham there I see, but the just a note that the select board agenda as it came out didn't say anything about a public hearing for those two policies. That they had announced, or at least indicated their intention when we presented, what was it, about a month ago, presented the policies and our recommendations. So I don't know for sure whether it's going to be held as a public comment session, or whether they're just going to discuss it themselves. So I know I have been encouraging everyone who wanted to come and say something to please do. And certainly if you're inclined to come and show support, please do. I just don't know if it's going to actually be an open, well, it's an open meeting, but it might not be a public comment a hearing. All right. As I said, the focus today will be on the committee comment back to the commission. I do hope that we can get through that fairly succinctly. I think we'll talk through what our little working group did to try to get us in place here. But I'm hoping that we'll have a few minutes at the end to talk about the Green Energy Clinic that the stationary working group just hosted. A fabulous event. We didn't get time at the last meeting to go over that, and I'm hoping, at least as while it's still fresh in our minds, to talk about that just a little bit. And John, I think John has a couple of quick charts to show on feedback. And at our next regular meeting, I would suggest that we get into a little bit more detail on that, because I think it was a great learning event. And it's always great to see each time we do one of these, how we can improve. And I think this is one of the best events we've had. Okay, with that, I see Mary is unmuted. Mary, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Mary Shaw, and I am co-chair of the Finance Committee in Eastham. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so what I want to do is just to preface where we're going, so I can just kind of set the foundation for this. Let me share my screen here. And the All right, can you all see that? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Um, the uh, I'll say I was very uh, enthused by the strong comments and enthusiasm from our last meeting. I thought it was great. The passion on wanting to get this right, and I certainly share that with you. And uh, Interestingly, the commission also watched the meeting. I think they watched it after the fact. So I have some comments from Steve that he sent afterwards. But basically, just to recall, based on that last meeting, we agreed that we'd have a smaller group go off and adjudicate the comments. A lot of good comments coming in from all the committee members, and I appreciate the time you took to put in your voting and your poll on that. As we've been saying, one of the things we're all recognizing is that this is a bigger plan than just the Climate Action Committee. We have core pieces in it. A lot of the items that the commission came and talked to us about, what was it, 4 months ago now, maybe, are reflected in there. But there's a lot of other things that are reflected from other comments coming from the community, from interviews with the staff. There were very specific outreaches that were done, as you recall, to different parts of the community, such as the part-time residents and some faith-based communities and the students, and there was a whole interesting series of things that were done. Their objective is to present that as a whole for the town to then take and prioritize and choose how to move forward. I think we will and should and the town wants us to have a big role in that next step. Um, I guess it wasn't exactly clear to us how much prioritization would be done before the plan is released. And so there's a few comments from Steve in here. But I think for the most part, from our meeting a couple of weeks ago that the core team had, which includes Roberta and I, that they anticipate giving us some of the tools that are needed to do that prioritization, but the prioritization is up to us and the town. So anyway, as we went through the adjudication and collation of all the comments, our first focus, and we talked about this a little bit, this was Eleni, Roberta, and myself. First focus was making sure that there's clarity and good organization in our minds, the way the goals at the top level within each sector kind of aligned. And that was Eleni's comment, and I thought that was a good one. So we spent some time on that to make sure that those were concise and clear. Um, Perhaps there's still a little bit of uncertainty until we see the next level of detail as to how all these get woven together. But our hope was that we can provide some comments to help fine tune that a little bit. And then we looked at the column that they call recommendations, which perhaps we could consider strategies, because underneath that, we believe there will be multiple areas, in some cases, or maybe many cases, multiple areas of actions that go within each of those. And again, the objective being concise, clear, and complete. Given the time frame of this, we really wanted to make sure that we were hitting the more impactful suggestions, not to give a blizzard of comments to the commission that would make it perhaps hard for them to work work them in. In areas where we thought good comments were provided but could be incorporated under some of the existing categories, we deferred to that. We have a list of those, and those are things that we'll be able to address as we go forward. So before I jump into the Steve Tupper comments, Roberta and Eleni, do you have anything you want to add to that? Any thoughts on how we did this and what you see as next steps?
Um,
I'm good. I think you got it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. And, again, this is not going to be perfect. And some of the smaller, the more detailed comments, you're still able to submit directly to the commission. This was more, how do we wrap this into a more impactful set of higher level recommendations that we want to get to the commission as a committee. So Steve wrote late on Friday. Um, and I'm summarizing his comments. If you want, I can certainly share the full email, which was a good like page and a half long. The draft cap, when it's after it's finished, well, after the draft is finished, will be shared with the core group. The town established the core group, which includes representatives, Roberta and myself to this core group. Um, uh, will be shared with us for a 2 week period. So I'm glad to see it's 2 weeks because initially they said 1 week, um, during which they will incorporate review comments and then release it for a detailed comment. The full committee will be included in that detailed comment. What they wanted to do was try to get it, get as much fleshed out, so that the number of comments coming back obviously are not going to be overwhelming and duplicative. The feedbacks from the current set of goals and recommendations, strategies, what is it, sectors, goals, recommendations, are still welcome. And he pointed out that individual comments are also still being accepted. He said the commission still plans on meeting with the committee on the release of the draft report. So that will be after Thanksgiving sometime, likely early December. And they want to hold to that timeline of meeting with the committee because they feel that will be more productive than having a meeting right now. In addition to the workshop that was held, to meeting on the the more details of the draft. I suggested to him that I felt, and I think perhaps some of you felt as well, that the workshop review period of seeing the sector's goals and recommendations for the first time didn't give us a lot of time to really dig into the meat of the matter and understand and give good comments back, and that's why we felt important to do what we're doing right now, and I think he understands that. And he reemphasized the importance of the perspective of the committee, but again, as we've been saying, pointed out that the plan is being informed by other key actors as well from the community. He also reassured that the plan will have an implementation section, which will outline the process that the town, with our support, hopefully will have for prioritizing. He talked about a rubric to help with greenhouse gas input impacts and relative costs and things like that. So that's all still to come. And he said each recommendation right now is being expanded. It's not written yet, but it's being expanded into significantly more detail than what we saw at the workshop. Okay, so that was Steve's feedback to us. Okay, and again, he's reassuring us that he does want comments from detailed comments from the full committee, and they will meet with us. At the end of this meeting, we should probably talk about potential timing for when we think we could, we could set up a meeting with them when we're all available, because the holidays are coming. All right. With that, what I wanted to do, unless you have any questions on or comments on that.
I might just say, so there's a layout to the schedule and next steps is very helpful. I was just wondering, just out of curiosity, is there a list somewhere of who the town core group is? Just who's in that group? Just curious.
Well, and I don't know, again, I don't know if Shayna came online.
Yeah,
but,
not a big deal, just curious.
But Shayna is leading for the town. Roberta and I are the liaisons with the climate and Energy Committee. And in terms of the meetings that we've been having, that's pretty much what we've been seeing. But I know she's been involving the DPW, she's been involving the planning department. And Mary, I don't know that she's involved the finance committee yet. But that's kind of how it's been laid out so far. All right. So hopefully y'all had a chance to look at the compilation of comments. What I wanted to do was at least go through with you some recommendations on what we think we might want to put at the beginning of the document, but also to see if there are any comments and questions on the document. I didn't want to go through that in gory detail, but if if there's specific areas that we should talk through, we can do that. And ultimately to have a vote on whether we think that this is something we want to submit as a committee. All right. So with that, let me just go to the preface comments, because these are things that are new that hopefully you saw in the document I sent back last week. We are submitting our observations and comments to help clarify objectives of each of the items, identify missing categories. Myself, I think that's an especially important piece. And then strive for concise and impactful recommendations, again, using their terms on that third column. We acknowledge the challenges that they faced, and we certainly commend them for their impressive work in pulling it together. And I know, I think we've all said this at one point or another, this would be very difficult, not impossible for us to, Hope is coming in. It's not impossible for us to have compiled in this kind of fashion. In terms of some of the top level suggestions, there was a suggestion that we perhaps use strategy or recommended strategy to avoid confusion. I know as we were writing up some of the recommendations, we kept running into conflicts with the term recommendation. So just a thought. I think each of these are and I think Roberta, you would voice this well. I'm trying to remember your statement. These are being respectfully submitted for consideration by the commission rather. These are not necessarily hard and fast. There may be areas here that they have very specific reasons for doing it the way they're doing it that they haven't fully explained yet because we haven't seen the full document. So first suggestion was, maybe a better terminology for that third column. Another good suggestion was reordering the goals in each of the sectors to put the most impactful one at the beginning. And I think transportation was one that was especially important in that area. Good suggestion on maybe using SMART type qualifiers to each of the recommendations, or perhaps just at the goal level, or maybe both. Rather than jumping in and trying to reword every one of their recommendations, although we do a couple that we thought were rose to that occasion, we thought adding this top level comment and requesting that they do that might be a prudent way to convey. There is a section called natural resources, and we thought that would be prudent to rename as natural resources and resiliency, or maybe natural resources, resiliency, and adaptation. And that better aligns with our strategic plan and covers more than, adds in the adaptation piece to that. Mike, you have a thought?
Yeah, regarding 7, isn't resiliency and adaptation a part of more than just natural resources?
Exactly. That's why we thought putting that in there would help qualify and help have better house the adaptation categories in that.
Yeah, but I'm saying changing the top level name, there's resiliency in adaptation in the other categories as well, not just natural resources. So why you want to highlight it? For example, buildings. Buildings should have resiliency as part of their plan, as part of the plan.
Right, right. But I think, and Eleni, you've been studying this for a while, so please jump in. But I think the thought was that in areas where there's greenhouse gas reduction mitigation, it goes into some of those categories, such as buildings, and then in areas where there's adaptation, responses to dealing with the effects of, on our local community of climate change, that
So
might.
So emergency sheltering and putting the town center on a microgrid with solar and a backup, that's part of natural resources?
Well, town center on a microgrid, I guess I'd leave it to you as what you think there. Emergency shelter doesn't reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so my opinion would be it would go into an adaptation section.
No, but it provides resiliency, right?
Right, so that's
I mean,
adaptation gets us to resiliency, right?
that's what I'm saying. I think resiliency and adaptation apply in more than just natural resources. So just highlighting that as part of the title in natural resources, I'm concerned that we think that's a placeholder for all adaptation and resiliency items, and I don't think that's true. I think it's
But I think we were recommending that we put the adaptation related items into that sector.
Natural resources.
Into a sector, right? So expanding natural resources to add resiliency, natural resources and resiliency, or however we want to word that. Eleni, you're more
Yeah,
experienced here.
I think we need to just be really mindful that this report is not ours. And we found that resiliency and adaptation was not well represented in this report. And we feel like either it runs through everything, and somehow the preamble or text of the report needs to emphasize that, or we kind of find a way, and natural resources, we're talking about erosion, we're talking about water, we're talking all those things promote resiliency and adaptation to some degree. So we kind of we're it's not perfect and it's not meant to be perfect. It's meant actually to send a message that they kind of missed this whole thread, and we're kind of putting it in there. They might change it, but we felt like we needed to assert it.
Okay.
Would it help along the lines of what you just said, Eleni, that we add in here? Well, I guess we said to provide better focus. We can make it clearer, something like and to provide a sector to include.
Yeah, that they could consider that.
Again, I don't
Yeah,
understand
something like that.
why we just don't have it in each of the major categories. I mean, to me, buildings needs one, natural resources needs one, community needs one. So I'm not sure why we need to
So-
put it in one particular sector.
It,
So, well, just a quick note, and then jump over to you, Eleni. So, Mike, they had specifically said that they designed the sectors to align with the Massachusetts climate plan. So that includes a series of greenhouse gas mitigation sectors, buildings, transportation, working lands, although we don't really have working lands here, those sort of things, solid waste, and then adaptation. Right. So that's how the state has aligned. With that, Eleni, please.
yeah. I mean, I'm one of these people who, and I use this metaphor in the past. It doesn't matter to me where it lands. It matters to me that it's coming on the journey. And so, if it might not make sense in everybody's mind but we were trying to find a way to put it in, and this might not be the absolute best way, but we are asserting it, and I think they're going to get the message. And then at the end of the day, we don't expect all these recommendations to necessarily present in the final report. We expect certainly some of them to, and maybe some from other committees and other stakeholders. And hopefully, collectively, all these recommendations that we're asserting here will strengthen the end product. So I would try not to get too caught up in this, because in the end, I don't think it matters that much. But we wanted to, put it in there and assert that we felt it was important and we felt like it wasn't explicitly laid out.
All right. I mean, I would think it would be an overarching, an overarching goal or strategy as part of each of the major
Yeah.
items. But
That's another way that, we could make a recommendation to that effect too. I don't feel exquisitely strongly about it, other than it felt like it was like not called out. So we can call it out, either, add one to each one of these sectors, or dump it in its own bucket with natural resources. At the end of the day, what really matters is, are we going to have goals to this effect, and are they going to be effective?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it signals to the commission that this is something the committee is thinking about it, and it could be part of our conversation in early December with the commission to go through that and say, okay, does it matter whether it's in the naming and the wordsmithing under a particular sector, or do we want to continue to reinforce the conversation about resiliency and adaptation and mitigation in the actual narrative of the document, particularly in the beginning, so it's very clear what we're going after here. So I agree with Eleni in terms of, yeah, we can add this and bring it to the attention of the commission, but in the end, we're wordsmithing, and we, as a finality, have to decide whether these words need to be in the sector name itself.
Yeah, John.
Okay, so I know we don't want to drag this out too much longer, but just to be clear, the working group is recommending that we have a sector where anything that is related to adaptation, any actions, recommendations related to adaptation, has a home. And it happens to be that sector was called natural resources. We're now changing the name and the scope effectively of that sector to be natural resources plus these other things. But we're saying that anything that is about adaptation and resiliency should find its home under this sector. Am I understanding correctly what your intent is in the working group?
That, I think, is accurate. Lenny and Roberta, if you disagree, let me know. Again, we're basing it off of a pretty standard approach. I think, Roberta, you've looked at more of the climate action plans than I have, but I think this is the approach that just about everyone is taking, right? The mitigation steps are divided into, transportation, buildings, et cetera, and then adaptation is its own section.
Yeah, it's called many things. Yeah, natural resources is one of them. Essentially, adapting to what's going on in our natural world, which is the fact, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay, thanks. If there are other items on here that you want to discuss, we can hit that real fast, but we are at 3:30, so I'm really going to keep this meeting to the 1 hour. So what I wanted to do is get into any other comments. So why don't we go around the virtual room? Any other thoughts on the compilation of the comments? Mike.
Other than pigeonholing, all the actions with respect to resiliency and adaptation into the natural resources, I think you guys all did a great job. So that's my only disagreement with what's being proposed. Is I worry about that we're going to have actions in buildings, and those actions should include resiliency and adaptation as the designs and/or implementations of heating, power, and so forth become more challenging with the changing climate. that should all be coupled in that one category with respect to buildings.
Well, but remember, buildings is, and let's talk real quickly about the sectors. Buildings is stationary energy. And the the commission decided to call it buildings just to make it clear to the common folk, to the non-experts. So that's stationary energy.
Right, which is
Transportation.
solar and batteries and microgridding
Right.
and
Well,
backup.
well, yeah, but see, here's an interesting piece. Again, the way they chose the state model. So the next category, which has generated some confusion, and rightly so, is energy supply. They just called it energy. So it's a little bit confusing. So energy supply, which is energy, is the electric grid, right? So there's where the renewable energy goes, and perhaps any policies dealing with permitting for renewable energy projects in town. And I think, John, you had mentioned, you'd asked, well, it seems kind of thin. Well, yeah, because the state has to work with the DPU and the electric utilities to clean up the grid. That's a major focus for them. I think our biggest lever there is getting more renewable energy locally.
Well, and providing a source of backup energy, particularly islanding.
Yeah.
Islanding to keep emergency resources up and powered and so forth. And if that's going to appear in energy, that's back to my point, then that's resiliency and adaptation in energy, not just natural resources.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it should be energy production or energy generation.
But remember, it's reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the electrical supply. That's what that sector is from the state.
Okay.
Okay.
So
it's just it's a poor label, actually.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yep. Harriet.
And I know we're not trying to wordsmith here this afternoon, but I think maybe part of Mike's point, Mike, you could certainly let me know if I'm wrong, but there are a lot of different reasons why we might be concerned about mitigating the impact of climate change on buildings. Not only because they provide community for the fire department or emergency services or emergency response and that type of thing. So perhaps community might be the sector in which we talk about resilience beyond just the specific powering of that building, but the services that building provides to the community, some really important services. So maybe perhaps community might be a home for some aspect of resilience as it relates to buildings.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is these are things that we could very specifically and probably better talk to the commission in person about. So to Eleni's point that we shouldn't micro wordsmith too much. We're just trying to hit the top level stuff. There'll be more time, and Steve has said that there'll be more time to talk in detail on some of these things. All right. So what you saw in the packet was the the grid that you see here with the recommendations. We've highlighted the areas where there's specific items that we're suggesting. So what I'll do, my plan here, pending approval, is I'll write the introductory paragraphs along the lines of what you just saw a moment ago on the screen, and then provide this grid, the spreadsheet with the specific recommendations that you saw before. So with that, unless there's any more, Harriet, did you have your hand up, or is it still up from before? Oh, you're muted.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. With that, do we feel comfortable making a motion to submit?
I make a motion to submit this overarching recommendation set.
We
I
have
second that.
a second. Very good. Any other comments, questions? Well, let's take a vote then. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. So excellent, and I think this will establish a really good I think digestible piece that the commission can work with, I hope. But as Eleni said, we may not see everything in there. These are just suggestions. Right.
So, Tom, it might be a good idea to reiterate what the timeline should look like over the next 6 weeks so that everyone has it in his or her mind about that.
Okay.
We understand that the draft will arrive at some point, probably right after Thanksgiving, right? I think there'll probably be a week, a period of time where the core group discusses it to a degree, but I think that there should be a date planned in December where the commission and the core group meet with the committee, right? So is that something we want to try to shoot for?
Yeah. What I was thinking is I can send out a poll and in advance so that we're ready to make some suggestions to the commission. I think they are hoping to get this out before Thanksgiving, and they're giving a 2-week period. So if that all happens, let me see what my calendar looks like. If that happens, then I think we might be able to meet as early as, let's see, Thanksgiving is the 27th. So if they really get it out before then, I know they've got a lot of work to do, and I appreciate all the work they're doing. It'll be either the first or second week that they'll get the draft out, full draft out. I'm guessing it's probably going to be more like perhaps the end of the week of the 8th. So that leaves the week of the 15th, and then we got Christmas. So let me put a poll out. I don't know what y'all are thinking. Is there any major travel coming up at the very beginning of the year? I know we can't meet during Christmas, but there's the week after Christmas, the week of the 29th. Is that possible?
Not for me.
It works for me.
So is the purpose, I'm trying to understand, you want our feedback on what they submit prior to you meeting with the core team and them?
No. They're gonna give the core team kind of a chance to do a proofread.
That's
right?
over 2 weeks,
That's a 2-week period.
right?
So I think by the second or third week of December, they will release it for public comment, and at that point, they want to meet with us.
Oh, okay.
So the week after Christmas, Mike, you said it's not good.
Not for me. No, I'm gone after Christmas till May. So I can do something remotely, but not in person.
Well, no, this could be remote, absolutely.
Okay, but again, I'll be on the road. So we'll leave here the 27th, and we're in Virginia for a few days, and then with our son and grandson, and then on the road to Austin. So I think we'll get in Austin around the 3rd.
Okay, so sometime after January 3rd for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, don't do it based on my input.
Tom, can I interrupt for a moment and just say,
Sure.
I really think the poll would be like, just throw a bunch of stuff out
Yeah,
there
yeah.
and then we'll see where everyone is. I can't make a determination this moment on, am I going to be around that or not,
Mhm.
So it feels like we're spending valuable time here trying to work out something that can really be done with another tool.
Yep, good point. Good point. All right. With that, I will send that poll out. And by the way, I'm also going to send an invite out to everyone for a holiday gathering. I'm hoping maybe December 19th can fit for folks. I don't know how Fridays generally work. I know it gets complicated getting up into the holidays, but I'll send that out separately. With that, John, look forward to your thoughts and maybe just opening it up to quick thoughts from the folks here on the clinic.
Oh, sure. Thank you, first of all, to everybody who participated in the clinic. As many of you folks around the table, you were essential to the success of it. We ended up having a couple of dozen individuals participating from the community at attending the presentation, as well as participating in the roundtable discussion. And it seemed that there was good, vigorous discussion and good back and forth with people getting questions answered. I did provide an evaluation form to everybody who participated, and we got 15 of those returned, completed, and the feedback was quite positive. I sent something around earlier. Let me see if I can, maybe I'll just talk through it rather than trying to put up charts. Give me 1 second here. See if this will work. All right, so if the technology is with us, you're seeing charts now.
Yep.
Okay, so there are a handful of core questions. I'll keep this brief. We asked people about their expectations for the event and whether those had been met, exceeded, or fell short. And overwhelmingly, people said that we exceeded their expectations for the event, which is great. And we always want to do better than people expected coming in the room. So 10 of the 15 said yes, exceeded, and the remaining said met. And we didn't have anybody disappointed by the experience. We asked about the presentation by Dan from Cape Light Compact, the value of that to people. And again, overwhelmingly, people found it very useful. 11 out of the 15, and the other 4 said it was somewhat useful, even so. So there too, we were hitting the mark with the presentation. And we always, with these events, want to get a sense of impact on people. Are they getting what they need? And are they doing something with it? So we asked 2 questions. One was about getting their questions answered. In this case, that was particular to the event design. The rules consisted of people sitting around the table and getting questions answered from one of our facilitators. And here the results were a little bit more mixed. We still had all or most of people's questions being answered for 9 of the 15, which is good. 6 of the 15 folks who responded said, I got some of my questions answered, but there was more that I could use. So we tried to get from them some sense of, if you didn't get your questions answered, what were the reasons for that? And we didn't get a response from everybody by any means. But in a couple of cases, it was because we ran out of time, or there were some specifics that carried beyond the scope of the meeting, where they needed some insight and maybe some additional help offline. So it seemed, generally speaking, like it wasn't a case of the facilitators not being able to handle the questions. It was more, there were some particular circumstances or time was a constraint. But this is still something we want to, always pay attention to when we're doing events like this. And then similarly, we asked about whether or not they felt that the clinic would have an impact on their actions in this space regarding the acquisition of solar panels and/or heat pumps in particular. And without exception, people said definitely. Given the choice between definitely, maybe, and no, people were pretty unambiguous about that one, which is really good to see, because that, of course, is what we're after, is having that kind of impact. In addition to that, the final thing that I will try to summarize briefly is we had note takers at each table, thanks to Roberta, Cheryl, and Jack, and capturing the key questions or topics that people were bringing forward in each of these groups. And we do have a summary of that, which I can distribute to folks. I'm still kind of working through it to refine it, but we've got a bit of analysis of that. The headline there, I think, is primarily that people were most interested in talking about or in asking about heat pumps. Which is, again, I think, a good thing. We've invested a good bit of time in raising awareness of solar opportunities, and people have acted on those to a significant extent. It's good to see we think that more often than not, people were interested in and had questions about heat pumps. And those questions ranged from the fairly technical to the broader questions about incentives that are available. But we're going to dig into those numbers just a little bit further and see what they tell us about the overall, because that can guide obviously our future actions in this space. So that's a very quick rundown. Any questions from folks or additions to what I provided by way of summary?
John, I have just a comment. I noticed you didn't mention the email that came back from Dan Shell from CLC.
Mm-hmm.
He was very impressed with the. It sounded like from his feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and even suggested that he would encourage other towns to follow this format for events in the future. Which
Yeah.
is pretty, and this is somebody who is probably doing this quite a bit to different kinds of towns.
Right.
And I thought that would be a good point to bring up
Thank you.
as well.
Yeah. And there was also, we had a guest from, it was Brewster, I believe, from the Brewster Climate Action Committee, who was there participating in the event. And he approached me afterwards and said, "This is great. This is something we would like to, emulate or maybe even partner on." So that was also a good data point to get back from one of our sister towns here.
Yeah, John, I'd like to add a few things. First of all, I personally was very impressed on how organized this event was, and kudos to you and your team. I think that when people came in, they felt immediately comfortable and understanding what they should do and so on. And the tables were so organized, and every effort was made to make them feel comfortable and open to comfortable in asking their questions and getting their questions answered. And I also think that Dan Shell did a terrific presentation. I've sat through a lot of these Cape Light Compact Mass Save presentations, and they're all excellent. And they have a lot of information. Often, however, it's almost too much information. They'll go into what Mass Save is. They'll talk about the various incentives in all aspects, whether it be solar, heat pumps. It's a lot. And sometimes I think people get a little overwhelmed, but Dan was terrific. He kept it relatively brief. He really focused on heat pumps. And that's something to think about in the future is when we have a Mass Save rep, how can they pinpoint what we're talking about so that the information gets through?
He was coached, Roberta.
What were you going to say, Mike?
I said he was coached.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so his original presentation was about twice as long as what he presented.
Yes.
And we told him what we thought he needed to edit and add and delete and so forth. So
well, there you go.
Mike Olaf and Jack were all very helpful in that coaching process and getting it to that state. But an extension of your point, and regardless, Roberta, for events like this in the future, a lesson for us is to do that coaching, to really get with, if you're going to have an external presenter, to really get with them early on in the process and make sure they're clear on what you're trying to achieve and make sure that you get an early look at what they're doing. And Dan, to his credit, gave us a draft really soon after we first convened, and that enabled us to get it shaped to a place where it made more sense for the event's timing. So, but thank you for those additional notes. Appreciate it.
Yeah, kudos to the committee overall. I think, you put in a lot of effort in this, and I think it showed. So I think all this is very much a good model that can be emulated and probably rerun this type of event fairly simply, right? Maybe at the COA or other locations where we think we get a good grouping. I thought the turnout was excellent. You never around here, you never get hundreds of people. It's just not going to happen. But these people will talk to another 5 friends of theirs who will talk to another 5 friends. So even though it looked like, it was only 30 people in the room, I think the impact is quite significant.
Yeah, and I want to kudos to John. John did most of the work, so he deserves a lot of the credit.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. It was a great team effort.
That was definitely John's, or the organization, all of the stuff, lessons learned from the solar workshop from last year. You incorporated all of it, John. You did a yeoman's work on this one for sure.
Above and beyond.
Yes.
Above and beyond.
Agreed.
Appreciate it.
All right, good job, all. With that, let me just run over to Hope Plavin, who joined us. Hope, did you want to say any words? Because I think coming up is ultimately integration of some of the climate action plan into the strategic planning process. And I think you have a December 8th meeting coming up that you had suggested, perhaps a couple members of our committee could come and chat with you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to weigh in. I don't have specific comments, but yes, if you're still able to come, I'll make sure I put it on the agenda that we make public so people know that that's happening. I think it would be great because we want to make sure that when we do quarterly updates on the plan, which we intend to do and present it to the select board, it's reflective of your work.
Now, as you heard, I think at that point in time, we're not going to have a final plan. But I think we'd be happy to chat about the inputs that we've been giving you in terms of how it works into the high level strategy plan, Eastham strategy plan.
No, absolutely. Yes, you've already given us some feedback to Karen and I, and we want to bring it to the full committee. So that would be great.
Okay, great, excellent.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. So thank you.
With that, one other piece, and I'll send out an email on this. Genevieve from the Green Club caught me after the meeting and said that they were awarded a grant that they just applied for under the, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a state DOER program. So big kudos to them, and that may be something we can continue to work with them on. I think they've shown a lot of initiative, so that's a really big deal for them to get that grant. All right, anything else members want to share? With that, we'll give you back 5 minutes of your day, and thank you so much for taking the time today.
Motion
See
to
you
adjourn.
See you on the 15th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
motion.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Hi.
Well done,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good
Bye.
evening.